Well, I'm super excited to announce the author of Divine Rivals and the Letters of Enchantment series, Rebecca Ross. Rebecca, thank you so much for joining me today.
Yes, thank you so much for having me. It's so nice to meet you and chat with you about the book.
Wonderful to meet you, chat with you. I could not put this book down. What inspired you to write this story?
It's really interesting that the entire story was sparked by a line I wrote down in my brainstorming journal. And it was this line: a girl who writes letters to her missing brother and the boy who reads them. And I was so intrigued by that. I had to ask myself questions like, well, who is this girl? Why is her brother missing? Who is this boy that's reading letters that he shouldn't be? And really, the whole book sparked from that.
I love that. I was obsessed with the letters between Roman and Iris.
Thank you. Yeah, no, the letters was one of my favorite aspects of the novel. You've Got Mail is one of my favorite films, and I knew one day that I wanted to write a story where two people who don't like each other in real life fall in love with through letters.
Are there any characters based off of people in your life in your book?
Actually, no, and I've been asked this before, and I really don't draw inspiration from people I know, or if I did, it's very like I don't mean to do it, so it might sneak its way in, but for the most part, no.
Okay. So, what is your favorite moment between Roman and Iris?
Gosh, this is such a hard question because I have quite a few. I think there's a couple chapters. So the chapter "A Sandwich with an Old Soul," where they share lunch together on the park bench, is one of my favorites. I also really love the scene in the chapter "Collision," which I will not spoil it for anybody, but it's a very intense scene in the middle of the book. And then I also loved the let's see, 7 Minutes Late chapter where they go for a run together, and it's almost like their first date, and they're kind of beginning to like Iris is starting to feel how much she is falling for Roman, while we already know Roman is very much invested in his relationship with Iris at this point.
That's what I love about the dual point of view. You don't have to wonder what the male lead is thinking. You already know. And
Yes.
he is head over heels.
Yes, he falls first and he falls like a brick. So
Yeah, I love that. So, who would you cast for Roman and Iris if this was made into a movie or a TV series?
this is another question I get asked a lot, and I honestly do not have anyone that I can think of. I will say quite a few readers have fan cast Roman for me. I've never had a reader fan cast Iris. I take that back. There was one reader who said she could see Emma Watson as Iris. But there's been quite a few Romans, and I honestly can't even think. Most of these actors they mention, I don't even know who the actors are, and it makes me feel old. Like, oh my gosh, I'm getting old. I don't know who these young actors are anymore. But yeah, so I don't have anyone like particularly in mind.
I love Emma Watson. I could see her as Iris.
Yeah, same. I love her too.
So, why should someone read this book if they've never heard of Letters of Enchantment? Tell us why people should read this book.
Yeah, so I feel like the right books find you at just the right moments, both as an author and as a reader. And I wrote this book at the end of 2020. So I think we can all remember what 2020 was like. It was a really difficult year. It was like a year of loss. A lot of us had no idea what the future held. And I think that's why I was so drawn to writing a story about two people falling in love against this very kind of grim and dark backdrop. And it kind of just reminded me that it's not a crime to feel joy, even when the days feel really dark. And there's always something good to fight for. So I wrote the book that I wanted to read, the book that I needed at the moment. And I think it has resonated with a lot of readers because they feel the same way. I also wanted to write a fantasy book that is very accessible to all readers. So there have been quite a few readers who say, I don't like fantasy or fantasy intimidates me, but they really love this book because they were able to kind of just dive right in. So if any of that interests you as a reader, you should definitely pick the book up. I think there have been quite a few people who've been very surprised by it. Again, going in thinking, oh, I don't really like read fantasy or I don't really read romance, but ended up really loving it.
Where did you get the idea of like a world of warring gods and these guys are like reporters during this war?
It really was. I just had to ask questions. So going back to that initial line, I realized her brother was missing because he was a soldier in a war and he was missing in action. And when I pictured him, I could see him in the trenches. So it kind of guided me to a World War One inspired atmosphere. And then I had to ask the question, like, well, where is this magic coming from? If letters are being magically transported to one person to another, where is the magic originating? And I was like, what if I brought in gods? And What if the gods had been conquered by humans and were sleeping in graves and two of them woke up one day and they had history with each other? Like, what would happen? So I always feel like most of my books do. They begin with this kernel of an idea and I just keep asking questions and build the world as I go.
It's quite the world that you created. I mean, oh my gosh, my mind was blown the whole time. And I love how you started with the brother. And I'm not going to spoil it for those who have not read Ruthless Vows yet, but I picked that up as soon as I could. As soon as that came out, I picked that up. And oh my gosh, the way that you ended it, Rebecca.
I know I have received quite a few therapy bills from readers, but I will say now that Ruthless Vows is out, you don't have to wait. You can immediately pick it up and continue the story.
Well, you are an incredible author. Thank you so much for joining me today. And if you have not read Divine Rivals or The Letters of Enchantment, what are you doing with your life? You need to read it now. Rebecca, thank you so much.
Thank you so much.